a printout of it. Get to it right now. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. So my name is Sarah. A little bit about me. I'm originally from Bellefonte, so about 10 minutes down the road. I didn't travel very far. Growing up, I didn't have much of an ag background, if any. Once I got to high school, I started riding and being at the barn more, which is where I got first introduced to that. Over here, you can see there's two pictures of a horse named Ridley, who I got to work with a lot, which was kind of my big introduction into ag. When I came to college, I was on a little bit of a roller coaster of decisions. I actually started off in elementary ed. I knew I really wanted to teach, but I wasn't quite sure in what capacity. And then I picked up an equine science minor and really got into that. And I ended up switching over to animal science. And I knew I still wanted to teach. And then I met Dr. Curry and learned everything that ag ed had to offer and made my final switch where I ended up here. All right, so starting off with our first question, who do I aspire to be as a teacher? So my teaching philosophy is really centered around bringing in students who were like me and didn't have an ag background. When I was in high school, we did have an FFA chapter. I just didn't know much about it, and I didn't really know the opportunities that it had. So my philosophy is really centered around bringing in those students who were like me, who may not have been very aware of what opportunities those classes had to offer and what they'd be able to do through them. So just bringing in any student, regardless of background, and making sure that they don't feel behind or out of place when they're learning the content with the other students. So here's a quick graphic about my teaching philosophy. This is just a little snippet of everything I want my students to take away from my classes. So when you're in my classroom, I want my students to develop as leaders and grow in professionalism skills, to practice hands-on skills, whether we're out in the barn, in a greenhouse, or doing other activities. Take initiative, feel welcome regardless of their ag background, learn something exciting, and I want to help them see their potential and create goals, even if those aren't ag related, any career or future goals they may have. So moving on, throughout the semester, we worked on setting up our classroom and how we want our classroom to run. You can see these posters are up here. They're a little bit small, so they might be easier to see up here. But starting off with my expectations, I expect my students to be on time and come prepared and communicate with me when needed and be an active participant in every class and just come ready to learn something every day. The consequences in the middle, these are my cooperating center's consequences and how they deal with discipline. So that is kind of how these are laid out and how I would use them in the spring. So starting off with your first offense, you get a verbal warning. The whole way down to your fifth offense, you meet with the principal, and that leads to a possible suspension. And finally, my classroom procedures, I expect my students to come in on time and find their seat and get prepared and be ready to roll for the day so that we can get through all of our content and don't miss anything from that day. All right, so moving on, the next few sections, we're going to be talking about if I could plan my own ag program, what that would look like. So starting off, in my program, I would want to have 3 different pathways that students can pick from. So their first year, every student will take an intro to ag class, and then they'll be able to pick from one of these 3 pathways, either plant science, animal science, or food science. And we're going to go ahead and break all 3 of those down a little bit more. So if a student picks the plant science pathway, they will start with intro to ag and they will end with ag sustainability. This is the same for all 3 pathways. The ag sustainability course would kind of include a variety of topics and would fit into each of these just because I think sustainability is really important, and I think it's really important that every student has that class under their belt. So then in the middle 2 years, they would take Plant Science 1 and Plant Science 2, which would be unique to the plant pathway. And at the beginning, we would just lay the foundation for some of the topics, and then in Plant Science 2, we would dig a little bit deeper. So moving on to animals, this is set up very similarly. We would start with Intro to Ag and with sustainability. And in the middle, they would take Vet Science 1, where we would learn a little bit about anatomy and briefly about all the vague topics of vet science. And then Vet Science 2, where we would dig deeper into veterinary procedures and animal anatomy. And then finally, our food and sustainability. Again, we start with Intro to Ag and end with sustainability. And in the middle, they would take Food Science 1, where we would talk about all the broad topics, and then Food Science 2, where we would dig more into food chemistry and more complicated procedures. So here's a breakdown of what one of these would look like. So for example, the units that we would go through in our Food Science 1 course, we would start off with food handling and safety, and then we would move into food chemistry, preservation, nutrition, and then we would move a little bit into animal products and packaging, and then hot topics in food science which I am very excited about and would love to implement. This would basically mean we would talk about all of the things that people tend to form opinions on without being fully aware of. So we would have debates about different dietary practices, GMOs, and things like that, just to help them get a little bit more knowledge about some hot topics in the food science industry. So moving on, my program would be centered around the three-circle model of ag education. If you're not aware of what this is, ag education consists of three different components. The first one is our classroom component, which would be the courses that students take and just our daily day-to-day classes. And then there's the FFA component where students get to show leadership and take initiative on some projects and go in and do different events and compete in different events. And they really get to grow as individuals and leaders and professionals. And then there's the supervised agricultural experience. This is basically where students get to pick their own project. This could be anything ranging from growing a garden and selling what they grow to raising an animal and things like that. And they get to take initiative and have their own project, and they track it throughout the year, and they track all their expenses and everything that goes along with that. So moving on, I made myself a little barn for if I had my own facility. That's obviously very important to me. So if I was able to fully design a facility, design everything that came along with it, I would design a barn. I set it up like this. So we would have 4 stalls for small animals. I put in like goats and sheep. I think that'd be something really nice for students to be able to take care of and for students to be able to use for their SAE projects if they would like to. And then we have plenty of storage. So we know that's important in a barn. And then a little outside area for our animals. So students would be able to come in here, maybe in our vet science classes, small animal, large animal, and come in and care for our animals and learn a little bit about animal management. On this topic, I also made a little $15 project for one of my classes. I made a little flower box. This is just something simple that if we had a shop class that students would be able to create and take home with them, they could use as a gift for their friends or family. All right, moving on to our SAE integration. We talked a little bit about our supervised agricultural experiences. In my classroom, I would really want to spend a lot of time helping students select something that really meets their needs and their future goals. I don't want this to be something that students just go through the motions and then don't take anything out of it. I want it to be something meaningful to them that they'll really be able to reflect on later and get something out of. We would also create a visitation schedule. This is especially important for students with animals. If they're raising an animal, you want to make sure as a teacher, you're out there checking on it every once in a while, just to make sure that everything is being maintained properly and properly taken care of, down to your facilities being clean and ready to go. And this also teaches students record keeping and financial planning. So while they're doing this, they have to keep track of how much money they spend, how much money they make, and they have to have full records of kind of everything that goes on with their project. So this just helps them stay accountable and learn a little bit about financial planning. So moving on to our FFA integration, I would greatly encourage my students to participate in FFA events. I think it's a great way for them to grow as professionals and leaders, and it's a really great opportunity for them to build some public speaking skills and other professionalism skills. If a student was desperately against it and super did not want to participate, I would not force them to, but I would definitely encourage it and definitely keep encouraging it and hope that they cave eventually. We would leave a lot of time for coaching during the day and outside of school so that students actually feel prepared. I don't want to tell them they're doing an event and then leave them with absolutely nothing, so that they're kind of out on their own. And CDE topics, these are our career development events. So these are different events that students can compete in at competitions, and these would be integrated in the classroom. So these range anywhere from food science to animal science topics to public speaking, and these are all things that we can at least try to cover in most of our courses, so students feel adequately prepared. So I wouldn't expect them to go out and do something I'm asking them to without me preparing them for it. All right, so program marketing. If I had my own program, I would focus a lot on community outreach, because it's really important that everyone in your community knows why your FFA program is important and wants to support it. We would have a big student social media presence and include some student testimonials to see why it's important to them and how FFA has benefited them and the ag program. We would also have some community-oriented instruction. So an example of what that could look like is in a plant science course, we could build a community garden, and we could do other community events like this, where students would be able to, as part of a course, go out and build a garden and learn a little bit more about financial responsibility and marketing to bring the community in, and then the community would see something that they can take out of the ag program. So moving on to our second point, What experiential education opportunities have I engaged in to become a better agricultural educator? So starting off with some key courses I took while I was here, starting off with ANSI 207 and 208. This is animal products. I absolutely love this class. We learned a lot about butchering and different animal products. I feel like I took a lot away from this. This is something I would not have gotten had I not taken the course. This is an experience I definitely wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And some of these concepts I will be taking into my cooperating center with me. All right, my next one is the Ag Education Tours 349 and 350, our shop processes courses. This was also an opportunity that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise. I got to learn some great hands-on skills from Dr. Ewing, where if I ever end up teaching a mechanics class or in that situation, I'll be a little bit more prepared for than I was. And my last one is Animal Science 117. This is the equine marketing class, and through this, I had a lot of opportunities. We learned a lot about planning an event, executing an event, and got to run the quarter horse sale here on campus. And with this, I also came back to be a TA for 2 years, which we will get into a little bit more later because that opened up a lot of opportunities for me. So moving on to my certifications, I have a safe tractor driving certification, which if the need ever arises, I'll be prepared for. Ag literacy certification, this just kind of helped introduce me to some different topics in ag that I would make sure my students are aware of. And then my first aid in CPR. So moving on to different professional development workshops I've completed throughout the semester, starting off with Ag Squared. We did that a few weeks ago. We got to learn a little bit more about inquiry-based instruction and got a lot of hands-on activities to take with us. And then last week, we went to Nashville for NAAE convention. And through that, I got to meet some other student teachers and see what their student teaching process has looked like compared to ours. And we just got to meet a lot of people that we could relate to, which was really nice to see. I also got to connect with a lot of teachers from across the country. It was really great to get their feedback and see what advice they had for me going into teaching. And with this, I also got a lot more hands-on activities I can take into my classroom in the spring. All right, so starting off with internships and experiences, a big experience I got throughout my time in college was I got to be part of the English equestrian team for a few years. This was a really great way for me to connect with people and keep riding while I was in college, which was really important to me. I also got to be involved in Thon, and we did a lot of fun extra activities like you can see up there. My next one, this goes back to the equine marketing class. I also got to take, this is with Mr. Brian Egan, and I also got to take his horse training class. And through this, I got to learn a lot of his training methods and how he works with horses, which was a really great way to kind of introduce me more to animal management. And then I got to come back as a TA for these courses, and I got to be in charge of the public relations committee, where I took all the photos of the training class and ran the Facebook and Instagram, which was a new hobby for me, which was a lot of fun and definitely something I would like to keep up with a little bit. Another experience I got while I was in college is I got to teach Sunday school at my church. Yes, that is her daughter. I got to teach Sunday school at my church, which is a great little teaching opportunity for me. I got to teach second graders for 2 years, which was just a little bit extra teaching experience. And second graders always come with fun stories for you. So it was such a fun experience to have. My last and probably one of my most meaningful experiences, over the last 2 summers, I've gotten to work at Shekinah Ranch Camp as their teen discipleship director. And basically what this means is I have a group of around 10 teenage girls every week, and I kind of help them help the younger kids. So basically what I do is we get up in the morning and we go to the barn and we get all the horses ready, and then I help them teach the little kids how to ride. And I also do their Bible studies and answer any faith or horse-based questions. And through this, I also got to teach some younger kid lessons, which was some more teaching experience. And last summer, we did a unique experience where we literally got baby ducks dropped on our doorstep. So I got to kind of help the teenagers learn a little bit more about animal care and management outside of just horses. All right, so moving on to my experience with multicultural and diverse learners. So I did a study abroad program where I got to go to Ireland and learn about their equine industry. I took a lot out of this. There was certainly a lot of fun riding moments that I took out of it, but I also got to learn a lot more about the equine industry over there and compare it to here and how our practices differ, even down to how different our facilities can be. And I also had the opportunity to work with the LifeLink students on campus. We did a lesson about caring for a plant, where we went through all the different things a plant needs, and then we potted plants and found a place in their classroom where those plants would get adequate lighting. So moving on to my last point, how am I prepared to maximize my student teaching internship opportunity? So my cooperating center is in Northern Lebanon, which is out in Fredericksburg, under Mrs. Jenny Balmer. Some details about my cooperating center. They have a barn, a greenhouse, they have a shop area, and something that I think is very interesting and unique is that they have a really large kitchen area. So they've got a huge kitchen that we can do a lot of fun food science things with, which I think is something very unique to them, which I am very excited to be a part of. Here's some pictures of our classroom, their Highland cow they have right now, and some other facilities. Oh, going back to that, some strengths of my cooperating center. One thing I really want to take away from Mrs. Balmer is her involvement with her community. She's very immersed in the community, and the community is very aware of the things that their chapter is doing, and I would love to take away some of her tips for that aspect of it. So some strengths I plan to take into student teaching. Enthusiasm. I've always known I wanted to teach. I didn't know quite in what capacity, but that is something that is very important to me. So I think that will definitely come off in my teaching. My willingness to learn. I am well aware that I do not know everything, and I have a lot to learn from Mrs. Balmer. So I will definitely be ready to listen to any feedback she has for me. And the last is adaptability. This has become very clear as an important skill throughout this semester. Just a few weeks ago, I was teaching a lesson out at State High, and the first day, my lesson completely fell apart. Absolutely nothing went as planned, completely bombed. So we had to go back to the drawing board and completely restart, and then the next day go in with a different plan that worked really well. So being adaptable is definitely something I've picked up throughout the semester, and I know that will be important in the spring, because things do not always go as planned. All right, so this is an outline of everything I'll be teaching while I'm at my cooperating center. They're also on the QR code I posted earlier, and there's some printouts of it up on this table if you'd like one later. So basically, going through each class, I will be teaching Mrs. Balmer's greenhouse class. Mrs. Balmer has another teacher, Mrs. Bolts, and I will be teaching her floriculture class for one unit. We'll be talking about Valentine's Day and Valentine's flowers. And then I'll go back with Mrs. Balmer and we'll teach planting and crops. And then in large animal science, this will be my longest course because it's the topic I'm most familiar with. I'll be teaching equine breeds, equine reproduction, and equine health and nutrition. And then we will move on to sheep and goats. And then in food science, we'll be starting off with preservation, which I heard Mrs. Balmer's students have been very eager to make pickles, and she is making them wait for me for this. So they keep asking me when we're making pickles. And then we'll move into a little bit of food chemistry and some animal products. And then intro to ag, this will again be with Mrs. Bolts. This is her middle school class, and I'll be teaching some leadership, plants and animals, and natural resources. And then wrapping up also with Mrs. Bolts, I'll be teaching a unit of electrical wiring. And this is just a quick layout of how I organize my classes. This is for my large animal class. It's kind of a calendar of every day we're there, every day we're not there, and all of my lesson plans will be going in here. That is also included in the QR code. All right, so here's my bell schedule from my cooperating center. It's very similar to what I was used to in high school, and it's just definitely nice to have while I'm planning. Moving on, my organizational strategy up to now has been keeping a planner, and every morning I write down everything I need to do. Doesn't mean everything gets checked off, but at least it's on there. So I'm hoping to implement this, keep doing this in the spring, and we'll see if that actually works out for me or if I need a new method. So some professional growth goals that I have. I really want to gain confidence in the classroom. Sometimes going in, I doubt myself a little bit and I'm not totally confident in what I'm doing. And that is definitely something I would like to work on, or at least come off a little bit more confident than I might be. My next thing is I want to increase my content knowledge. Not coming from an ag program, I definitely think I may have missed out on some content along the way. So just picking up on that and feeling ready to go every day. And my last point is finding organizational techniques that worked well for me and that I can implement in the future. So if my writing everything down plan doesn't work, finding something new that I will be able to keep using as I move into my future as a teacher. So my final slide here, just some thank yous. I wanted to shout out my family really quick for always supporting me and my friends, even when I'm changing my mind a million times, and my professors for letting me come in really late and helping me catch up. No matter how many times I change my mind, my friends and family are always there to support me. Even if I'm doing something they may not fully understand, they're always there to learn right alongside me. And then here's this QR code again if you didn't get it the first time. And that is all I have for you. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you. You've had enough for questions. Would somebody like from the audience to start?
Okay, I have one.
Yeah.
So I know you don't have the ag background,
Mhm.
but what kind of, I'm trying to think of what really helped you that you could bring on to your incoming students that kind of pushed you towards the ag, kind of made it a little bit, I don't want to say easier, but maybe a little bit more workable
Mhm.
to get them into, hey, this might be a road that I want to go down.
Yeah, I think my biggest thing is I found a topic that interests me. Like I found something that I was super interested in, which was horses at the time, and that kind of opened the door for me. So helping them find something that they're interested in, and if it ends up not being ag, then helping them find an interest somewhere else where we can still drive them toward their future goals, even if they're not in ag.
So you talked about your willingness to learn with student teaching, and we hope that our ag teachers become lifelong learners. What are some ideas you have about your own professional development? Like, let's say, what do you hope to be doing in 5 years, or hope skills that you hope to acquire in the next 5 years?
In 5 years, I definitely hope to be teaching. I hope to be a little bit more confident in the classroom, and not that I don't already have a big list of resources, but hope to have some more resources that I can look back to when I might be a little bit behind in my content knowledge.
Sarah, I noticed you used SketchUp. You did a very nice job, by the way. How do you see the potential to utilize a platform like SketchUp, doesn't need to be SketchUp, but using something like SketchUp with your future students? And then also, why is that important for their future career readiness?
Yeah, I actually thought about this a little bit. I think a few areas I thought of using it is definitely in a greenhouse class. We did talk a little bit about different types of greenhouses, and they could maybe design one to see everything that goes into it. And I also thought maybe an ag business class where they could design a facility and get into more of the financial aspect of it and the safety aspect of it while designing so that they could see what that realistically looks like if they were to design something in the future.
How would you make students feel welcome in your classroom that didn't come from like an ag background?
Yeah, I think a big part of this is just not leaning toward the ag kids naturally, making sure that each kid is kind of like equally a part of the classroom and that each kid is like equally involved in the classroom and not gearing myself toward the ag kids because they know everything already and making sure that each kid is like an equal student in my room.
Sarah, ag programs are a little weird and unique because it's not just the classroom environment, as those other two circles that you referenced. I'd like you to talk to me more about mindsets. So the idea of growth and fixed mindsets with students, the time that you're spending, not just in the classroom, but outside the classroom with those students. How do we grow those kids unintended towards the growth mindset throughout the journey of a young adolescent when it's really hard to do so?
Yeah, I think having a growth mindset, even down to like their SAE projects, like if something's not going well, then we can readjust and move on to the next thing. So they have to grow through that. If they stay in a fixed mindset, then they won't be able to progress their project. And in FFA, if they're on a team and they're competing, then they have to be ready to grow and learn more for the next time if it doesn't go as well as planned. So if they stay fixed and like, oh, we weren't good at that, then they won't get any better. So just pushing them to that. And then once they see it, they'll kind of realize like, oh, okay, if we go back and try again and try something different this time, it might work out a little bit better.
A big part of FFA is obviously the community connections and making sure that everyone can like connect to a resource or whatever. Now, not coming from an ag background, and just how do you hope to build those connections of people that you might not have been able to build over your life so far, I guess.
Yeah, I've definitely thought about that. Whatever community I end up in, just finding a way to immerse myself in that and making as many connections as possible. That's definitely some questions I have for Mrs. Balmer when I get there. just finding an outlet to meet people and meet the resources that my community has, and then building off of them to meet some of their people and go from there.
Sarah, you mentioned, you're obviously not from a traditional ag background. And we're seeing so many students like you that are not from that traditional ag background, which is great. And that brings a really unique perspective to the field. How are you, like, do you have ideas for how you'd want to recruit folks into your program? Like the students like you who might be into horses or some component, but definitely like, oh, I don't belong to that end of the hallway.
Yeah.
How do you think you're gonna go about doing that?
I've definitely thought about that a little bit. I think I have some growing to do in thinking about that, but I think one thing I've thought of is maybe trying to recruit for more of like the leadership aspect of it. Like you can grow as a leader, you can grow as a public speaker, you can grow in all these professionalism skills that you will be able to use instead of just saying like all of the ag things we'll be doing, kind of showing them the benefits of it and what they could take out of it if they did join.
Questions for Sarah?
Sarah, how would you and who would you leverage to help you lead your program?
Definitely the community would be a big one. So bringing in community members to help with the program, also administration so that they're kind of aware of what we're doing and build up some support from them. And then our students as well, getting them involved to support the program and support the program when they graduate and become alumni of that program.
I'm gonna push you a little bit, who in your community?
I'd probably start with industry members, whether that be like business owners, farmers, things like that, people that can directly bring in their skills into the classroom, even as like guest speakers or helping with the students a little bit, people whose content knowledge can go straight into the classroom, and also parents of the program too, because their kids are in it, they kind of see what it's all about and they'll be able to support as well.
We get them all together to help lead your program, what's that called?
That is called your advisory board.
Anything else for Sarah? Can you help me congratulate her one last time? We have our next presentation here at 12 o'clock, so I'll ask you if you want to celebrate some more with Sarah. You're retired at 2:14 with some more presence in that space. Thank you for coming.